Let's discuss the difference between the kinds of absolute value inequalities that you might get. There are two basic cases. In the first case, you may have an example of a problem where your quantity of x, or some expression involving x, is less than or equal to a number. In the other case, you may see an algebraic expression involving x where the absolute value of that expression is greater than or equal to the number. So you need to focus on the direction of the inequality because that will change the way the problem is worked. Let's look at two basic examples just to compare how they work. In this side here, let's try the absolute value of x plus 4 is less than 10. And on this side, let's try something like 2 times the absolute value of x is greater than or equal to 10. First thing you need to do whenever solving an absolute value inequality, where you have an absolute value with x inside, is make sure that you isolate the absolute value part on its own. So if you have any numbers or anything else going on near the absolute value of x, you want to get rid of that first. So in this case, we would need to subtract 4 from both sides in order to get the absolute value of x is less than 6. Or on the other case, we would need to divide both sides by 2 so that we could isolate that absolute value of x part. Absolute value of x is greater than or equal to 5. Once you have it in the format matching to the description up at the top, then you can proceed to solve the inequality. We can think of this first expression here as saying that the absolute value of x is less than 6, which means the distance of x from 0, that's what absolute value means, is less than 6 units away. So in order for x to be less than 6 units away from 0, it would mean that x would have to be between -6 and 6. And so we write that as -6 is less than x, which is less than 6. So whenever you see the less than case, basically you're going to bring down the x and the less than and the 6, that's right here, but also put a -6 in front and another less than sign. You'll get a compound inequality every time when you have that the absolute value is less than the number. On the other hand, if you have an example like this one over here, where the absolute value of x is greater than the number, you can't think of it the same way because now we're saying the distance from 0 of x is at least 5 units away, more than or equal to 5 units away from 0. So that leads us to two possibilities. It means that x could be greater than or equal to 5, then it would be 5 or more units away from 0. But the other possibility is if you think to the left side of the number line, if x was less than or equal to -5, it would also satisfy the inequality. So you end up with two separate inequalities whenever you're doing the greater than case. One of them basically is just a recopy of the problem, but with the absolute value bars dropped. But the other one, you'll notice, you bring down the x, you flip the direction of the inequality symbol, and then the 5 becomes -5. Next step would be to graph the solution or to put it in interval notation. So let's see what the picture of each of these look like. In the first example, -6 is less than x, which is less than 6, means we're talking about numbers between -6 and 6. As remember, their distance from 0 was less than 6 units away. So that's all of the numbers in this interval here. And we would use parentheses in this example just because of the less than does not have or equal to. On the other example, we would have a picture where we're looking at, in this first inequality, x is less than or equal to -5, and in the second one, x is greater than or equal to 5. So we have two diverging intervals. One goes this way from -5 with a bracket, and the other one goes to the right from 5. And because it was two separate intervals, that's why we had to write two separate inequalities. If you were asked for interval notation, this would look like parentheses -6, comma 6. We only need one interval because there was only one section shaded on the number line. But in the second one, since they're two separate pieces, we're going to need to write two separate intervals. The first one is everything from -infinity to -5 with a bracket. And the second one is everything from 5 to infinity. And then the trick to connecting them together is to use a U for union. Hope that makes clear the difference between the main two cases in absolute value inequalities, those involving less than and those involving greater than.
Made with Doodlecast Pro.